I wanted to get top 100 on a style of map that I'm not very good at, bobsleigh. It started as it always does. I went on YouTube and checked the world records to see which map has interesting stuff going on in it, and it turns out this season has loads to offer someone who likes anything weird, preferably with a cut. There's one complete reroad, one cut with a bobslide, and 2 cases of going over a reactor block backwards to get a different type of boost, one of which we will look at today. Here we need to do a 360 with a perfect bounce off the wall, a zoop over the reset block that would take away our reactor, and then we still have to land straight somehow. As always, I thought it didn't look like it was going to be that difficult, and as always, I was wrong. The map starts with a simple asphalt section, after which we jump into the bobsleigh where we drop down after one left turn. After a combination of turns, we jump to the reactor where we could do the previously shown 360. Now just one more combination of bobsleigh turns and we are at the finish. When I got the author medal, I used action keys 2 for the turns and no action keys at all for everything else. The run was as standard and uninteresting as one could imagine. I will use the resulting time of 37:72 as the baseline for looking at future runs. For everybody uneducated like myself, if I understand correctly, you want to use action keys 4 during a slow speed wiggle like this, you want to use action keys 3 for medium speed turns or wiggles, and action keys 2 should be used for corners at high speed. This is obviously not everything there is to know, but it's all I have for now. Having figured out the action key situation, I started implementing some of the stuff I saw the world record do. I jumped to the left at the start and tried to wiggle on every straight. When I went for the 360, I was usually too slow to even jump over the black asphalt and instead resorted to hitting it at a 90-degree angle while holding throttle, brake and nothing else. None of those attempts went anywhere, and the first improvement to the personal best does manage to overjump that hurdle. Generally, a speed above 440 will do the trick. The reactor pretty consistently gives you a boost as you're taking off, but I lose all of that speed and more due to a bad landing. While the cleaner execution of the start did gain me a bunch of time in comparison to my author medal, the ending lost me almost half a second relative to driving normally. For the next 11 improvements I used a rather simple approach to the 360. I tried to get the correct speed and aimed to arrive somewhere in the middle under the checkpoint. Since I was often rather slow, I held the throttle for as long as possible and released right before touching the ground. Then I started throttling up as I was almost at a 90-degree angle and steered left or right depending on my attempt. Throughout these improvements I learned how to cope with the oscillations after landing to maximize my chance at not losing all of my speed or flying off somewhere. I learned to tap carefully while on the vertical bit to get my car to be straight as I crossed the red lines. While below them, I steered into the turn to prevent my car from getting out of control, and as I exited the first turn, I already thought about the entry to the next one, which often meant tapping right to get up the wall a bit earlier. This makes overshooting at the exit a bit less common. All of these things don't really change that a lot is already decided when I land, and I still kind of feel more like a passenger than a driver in this section. I had improved by more than 2 seconds since I started attempting the trick, but the world record was another 2 seconds faster, and more importantly, I was still not in the top 100. The vast majority of the time was gained in the second half. At the big jump, my new best time is only 0.1 seconds ahead of the first time with the 360 in it, due to a bad landing. But at the end it has gained 2 seconds thanks to a good landing and a great line to the finish. This is when I put my run next to the world record and had a close look where the remaining 2 seconds were to be found, and there were a couple of things I noticed. First of all, he gains loads of time on me after the drop from the first turn, even though I was only 3 speed behind at that point. This is due to a bad entry into the first turn, which causes the car to oscillate up and down, and just as I dropped, my car was on its way up, which makes me spend much more time in the air. Not only do I not accelerate forwards while I'm flying, but there is also a landing slope that the record does land on and that I end up kind of missing a bit. This costs me more than 10 speed. At the cut, I finally noticed how much time I spent just sliding on the ground and that the world record jumps much further left and bonks underneath the checkpoint instead of multiple car lengths behind it. All that time sliding around will cost me speed while the world record is already accelerating ahead. The setup that I ended up using was that I held left as I exited the corner before the jump and only let go once my car was facing the arrow on the sign before the checkpoint. Then I turned off action keys as always and held right. Thanks to my continuous improvement at the beginning and my new strats, I would have to release the throttle much sooner to avoid overjumping. The turn after the landing continued to be mostly random for me, but the general rule is, if you land too low, you over-rotate it before the bounce, and if you land too high, you under-rotate it. You want to land somewhere on the vertical bit and hope for a good exit. After a bit more grinding, I finally got this run. At the start, you can see me stay more inside than the world record, which gets me a wider exit into the bobsleigh. Here, Mate gets a substantial boost due to the better airtime that we talked about earlier. I still haven't quite worked out how to get that consistently. The speed from the landing carries really well on bobsleigh, and at the 360 the world record is substantially ahead. Now he gets a much better zoop and carries that speed into the finish. My ending is not that great. With a good second half I could have gotten a much better time here. As it stands, I am still more than 1 second behind and I don't think I have more time to put into this right now. I decided to accept this time after trying to improve for a bit, and I thank you all for watching. See ya.